And hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my wonderful co host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen Frederick, happens to be an attorney, a medium, and also my husband. Stephen,
And,
how are you? And what?
and really handsome.
Yes, that too, of course. Very handsome. Stephen, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm very good. It's Friday. It's all good.
It's all good.
Everything's all good. Go ahead.
How are you coping with the weather?
As I said yesterday, I hate this weather, and I would rather be in the middle of a blizzard, a 3-week blizzard, than to be dealing with this heat and humidity. And on the Cape, at least, thank God, it's better. You know, it's like 10 degrees cooler than it is inland, but it is still horrible. Horrible, I tell you, horrible.
So he, aside from being an attorney and a medium and my amazing husband, he's a little bit of a drama queen. He gets very hysterical about the heat, and he is suffering, and he really does have a countdown for October and Halloween, and then of course Christmas. And I'm not kidding. That's the honest to God truth. Correct?
Yesterday, I think it was the last sunset after 8 until May of 2023. Thank God. So, just saying. Thank God.
But for those of you who are listening and you're listening from elsewhere, not in New England, we come, of course, we're live from Attleboro. We live in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. But of course, our show gets heard all over the world. So for those of you who are not from here, it's been a little hot, even though compared to the heat that the south of the United States is seeing, I think we actually have some pretty good weather here. But nevertheless, it's still way too hot for Stephen.
Well, the world is having this heat. Like, not just this country, the world is having this heat, and it's just going to get worse and worse unless something's done. Just saying.
Yes. And we also have been dealing with a little bit of a drought, so we haven't had any rain or significant rain in a long time. So Mother Nature is not very happy at the moment. And
No.
you can tell by the shrubs and the flowers and the trees and so on. So aside from that, Stephen, what else is going on? I know you got a lot going on. Tell people again what's been going on with the Lady of the Dunes documentary.
Well, I can't start there because there's something
okay.
much more pressing that's going on with me, and he's called Henry II. Henry II is killing me. So last Sunday, I went for a run on the canal and found a seagull that had a broken wing and can't fly. So I turned around. I'm yet to have like a full run on the canal because Henry is playing with my mind. I went back. Poor Elix is still sleeping, and went to the bait shop, got live fish, like bait food for him. I bought a net and gloves, and I brought a sheet to get him and to bring him to the wildlife sanctuary that's in Barnstable here on the Cape Cod to see if they can fix his wing, or at a minimum not just have him in an environment that he can't fly. That's a whole part of a bird's life, right? Is fly and be able to be able to find food. And I was unsuccessful because he can't fly, but he can definitely hop and go fast. And the canal has just rocks going down, so it's really, really difficult once he goes to the rocks and he heads to the water. And once he goes into the water, forget about it. I can't get him because he's in the canal, he's in the ocean. And so this started Sunday, and it's like every day, every other day, he's driving me bananas. Like, so this morning I went running. I just start the run, and there's a fisherman, and he's behind the fisherman. So I even asked the fisherman, do you have live bait? Can you give him some food? And he was like, I'm sorry, I don't have live bait. So I turn around, go back to the car to get my stuff, and go back, and Henry II is missing. Elix, I don't know how this is happening. What, a couple of days ago, went 3.5 miles of looking for him and can't find him. He's there 1 second and he disappears the next.
Yeah. So for those of you listening and saying that cannot be real, it's very real. That's my life with Steven. This is an everyday occurrence. I wake up, he comes home, his whole leg it's bleeding. He's got cuts and scratches everywhere, and I'm like, what happened? And of course, he fell. He got his leg caught. Yesterday, when we went running, not yesterday, the day before, we were looking for Henry. Of course, Steven decides he's gonna go down the canal. He falls again. I'm like, I cannot keep up. It's actually pretty stressful to keep up with you.
No, Felix, I didn't fall. I didn't. The second time, 2 days ago, I didn't fall. There's a part of the canal that has like some trees, so I needed to get to that. I shot to be able to make sure he wasn't like, on the rocks behind the trees. I couldn't see him. And plus, you didn't even see it. You kept running. And it was like a grassy area. I'm like, well, this will be easy. Well, I don't know if it's because we haven't had rain in ever, but it was like a slide. So I sat in my rear end, I could not stop. My sneakers, my hands, I slid. I thought I was going to end up in the canal. It was like a slide. I was like, wee, and my feet finally got this boulder, and I stopped myself, and then I couldn't get back up, and finally, I shouldn't even have told you because you wouldn't even have known.
Yeah, except that your butt was all dirty, and so yeah, I would have known at some point. But honestly, this is. I mean, I'm not kidding you guys. This is what living with him it's all about. Why he's calling him Henry II is because we've already gone with another seagull, where we took to the I don't know, the nature
the wildlife
place,
yeah
the
yeah.
wildlife, and of course they do their best to get them back in health, and if they cannot, they'll just put them to sleep. But this is what life looks like with Steven the medium. And I honestly, that Sunday, I just woke up, I looked at him like, okay, so I know we're gonna go back to the canal. I know we're gonna look again to see where this bird is, because if we don't, he will be driving me bananas. So,
well, you married your father. Tell the story that your mom just found out.
My father was exactly like that. He would pick animals, hurt animals, injure animals, no matter any kind of animal, and bring it home. And my mother was actually telling me recently that we had this stray dog that my father found, and he was hurt, and he brought him back to life, to health. And my father had told my mother that he took the dog because somebody dropped him off and left it in our home. After my father passed, my uncle said to my mom, I got to tell you, that was not the real story. He actually found the dog and brought it home. And my mother at that point, she just laughed because she knew my father. I mean, that was just our reality. That's what happened throughout my entire life, childhood. Animals showing up, and we had, God only knows, a farm filled with all kinds of animals. But that's what it is. I have a great deal of respect, and I love that part of you, and I think you are crazy. But having said that, I wouldn't change that for anything in the world, because it shows me the kind of person that you are, and that's the kind of people that I want to have my life be surrounded with. So nothing wrong with that.
All right, that's good.
But with that said, we'll talk later on about Lady of the Dunes, because there's a whole lot of good things happening with the latest premiere of of the Dunes, which is the oldest unsolved murder mystery in Massachusetts, specifically in Cape Cod. But we'll take time at the end of the show to sort of give people a little
that I was in.
Update.
You're missing the biggest part that I was in.
Okay, yes. So Steven, of course, is the highlight of the documentary. He was in. He plays a very important role, and it's an amazing documentary. And
it is.
And we really are hoping that very, very soon the documentary will be available to the general public, so that all of you, no matter where you are, will get access to seeing the documentary. So, but let's talk a little bit about today's show, Stephen. So today we don't have a guest. It's gonna be Stephen and I, and this is gonna be the first part in a series, and we are going to call it maintaining positivity, balance, and mental health. And this part is coping with recession anxiety, and and I think that's really important, Stephen, because we've all seen in the headlines. You've heard the news updates. You felt the impact of rising gas, food, housing costs, and today's show is about really taking a look at how all of those things and the conversations that we're having about all of those things impact our positivity, our balance, our mental health, and most importantly, of course, what can we do to cope with what we're going to call recession anxiety, and that is a thing. I don't know. Have you heard that before, Stephen?
No.
So that's I'll talk about what that is. When we come back from the break. But I think that's an important show because I think everyone, we all, you hear the news, and often, what we hear, there's not a lot of positive stuff. So how do we maintain a good, positive, balanced mental health attitude when everything that we're getting is so negative and it's so depleting, for our uh, both our physical and mental health. So I think this is going to be an important show and show that will be of value for anyone who's listening. What do you think?
I love it.
Awesome. So with that said, let's take a break. It's time to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about maintaining positivity, balance, mental health, and coping with recession anxiety. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my wonderful, very handsome co host,
Stephen F. is here.
Stephen F., who happens to be an attorney, a medium. Together, we are Steelex, and I co host his show every Wednesday at 5, and he gets to co host my show every Friday at 1. So, welcome back, everyone. By now, as I said previously, we've all seen the headlines, you've heard the news updates, you felt the impact of the rising gas, food, housing costs. And the question for today is, how does this impact our positivity, balance, and mental health? And what can we do to cope with what we call recession anxiety? Now, although by definition we're not currently in a recession, many are facing economic hardships. And so the question is, how do we maintain a positive sense of well-being, balance, both physical, emotional, and mental health during this term recession anxiety? So now we've heard the term, but what exactly is recession anxiety? So now the official definition of anxiety per the American Psychological Association is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worry, thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure. And I think it's safe to say that many of us experience anxiety at any time throughout our lives, and perhaps there's many people who experience anxiety throughout the day. Now, recession anxiety refers to the uncomfortable feeling that comes from our personal finances being negatively impacted by downward changes occurring in the U.S. or the world economies. And Stephen, I'm gonna say, I mean, I'll be the first to say that I think that is a common occurring for most of us, most Americans. I would even argue for anyone, no matter where you are. It so happened that we're talking about the American economy, but I would argue that this is something that perhaps can be felt by anyone anywhere in the world. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think. I think it starts closer to home when there's something going on in the world. You automatically go to the security of your job. And even though this environment right now, the unemployment is at an all-time low, it's still something that I think can drive anxiety.
Yeah, and even in that is so. But we still live in a world with a lot of uncertainty, and I think that uncertainty adds to that perhaps that uncertainty, coupled with all the news that we're bombarded with day in, day out, adds to that recession anxiety. Now, that emotion that can have a direct impact, on our financial life. Those who are anxious or stressed are more likely, Stephen, to engage in costly financial behaviors. So, for example, when you are stressed about, your economic well-being, you're really worried about, your financial future. Some of these individuals look to high-cost financial services firms. They withdraw cash from their retirement accounts, and they do, things that in the long term may actually end up hurting their financial well-being. Now, while a downturn is not a foregone conclusion, some experts have recently boosted the odds of a recession happening in the near term. So, and there's a lot of current research, like Citigroup, assessing global economic growth over the next 18 months sees about a 50% probability of a global recession happening. And Goldman Sachs has put the odds of a recession for the U.S. at nearly 30% in the next year. So again, those are things that can add to that uncertainty, that can add to that anxiety that we experience depending on our circumstances. What do you think, Stephen? How do you relate to the term recession anxiety?
Well, I was just thinking in my head also that, the clients in, working in juvenile court, the clients that I work with are indigent clients, and it's all perspective also, because, some of my clients that live paycheck to paycheck, ironically, may not even be as impacted as someone that has a lot of money, because it's almost like bigger than them, and they're barely making it every week anyway. So this may not even be like on their radar at all, versus somebody who's in a different financial situation. So I think this recession is such an important subject, and just how it affects the different population.
And on the other hand, I would say that somebody who is, indigent status, right, where they're living paycheck by paycheck. So think about the recent increase in food costs, in gas prices. So if somebody that may have the resources to pay for that, what happens to those individuals who literally could barely make it when the gas price was at a decent price? What happens to those individuals? Are they really able to afford driving a car? Are they able to even afford going to the market and buying, feeding a family of, 3 or 4 or whatever? And I think that is something that, for me anyways, I wanna think about, because I often focus on, oh my God, the gas is so expensive, it's outrageous, and I'm able to make do, right? I don't like it, I don't like paying extra for it, but I've never thought about those individuals who don't have the ability, who do not have the resources. What happens to those individuals? Do you get what I'm saying?
No, I do. I mean, a lot of my clients don't have cars, so that piece is it's a moot point for them. But the food, cost, and the utilities, if they're paying utilities, yeah, of course, all of that affects them. I just meant in the sense that this recession anxiety, for some of my clients, they feel like they're in a place of they don't control much of anything anyway, so
yes,
they just get by, and I think it's sort of, I guess what I'm saying is that there's probably like a backdoor anxiety of this recession anxiety for them. It's different than maybe a different population.
Yeah, and that, Stephen, that reminds me. A client of mine he recommended a book. It's called The Gap and the Gain. It's a book written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And as I was preparing for the show and just reading about some of the research on, the potential causes of a recession, it made me think of The Gap and the Gain, and it's in very simple terms. I mean, it's a book I highly recommend for anyone, because it really helps you sort of rethink and reframe how we view, what it is that we want or what it is that we need. But in essence, when you are in the gap, you are driven by need. I need to have this much money in my account. I need to have this job. I need to have this outfit. I need to have whatever that is. In comparison, what I'm hearing you say, a lot of those individuals that don't have, they already live in a space where they don't have anything like that, right? They're barely surviving. That need may not be there. They're not thinking, I need to have a brand new car. They're just thinking, I just need to be able to get to work. Right? So, so when you're in, according to the book, the Gap and the Gain, when you're in the gap, you measure yourself against an ideal. And it's often an unrealistic and an unhealthy idea. And again, think about how often we say to ourselves, um, I will be successful when I reach this, when I have this, when I have a home, $1 million home, or $1 million car, whatever, right? So that puts us, according to the book, in the gap, or the authors of the book, in the gap. On the other hand, when you are living in the gain, you're driven not by what you need, but what you want, and not what you want, not a need, and what you want becomes, it's often a healthy and a chosen one. So nothing, not an unhealthy one, but actually a healthy and chosen one. And you measure yourself against where you come from and where you started versus what you haven't got or where you're not. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yes.
So it's sort of important because as I'm listening and I'm thinking about the our subject today, how do we deal with the recession anxiety? I think I would argue that a lot of the anxiety comes from our desire to need whatever it is that we need, and and our desire to keep measuring ourselves against some unrealistic ideal, some unhealthy need. And I think this is really an opportunity to like put things in perspective. And I will tell you, as I'm listening to you, Stephen, and listening to the experience that you've had with some of your clients who don't really have much, but they still live, they make do, they do whatever they have to do to
Right.
survive. It puts me in a place of thinking, how often do I discount my gains, where I come from, everything that I've done, because I'm focused instead on everything that I haven't gotten, everything that I haven't done. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, of course.
So I think this is an opportunity. I hope you guys, really get the conversation. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to continue this conversation about how do we maintain positivity, balance, mental health, and how we cope with recession anxiety. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my wonderful co host,
Steven is here.
Stephen the Medium. So, you got Helix for the remaining of the hour, and today we are talking about maintaining positivity, balance, and mental health, coping with recession anxiety. So, we've been talking about what really is, how do we define recession anxiety, and why does it matter? Why do we really need to pay attention to how this, recession anxiety may impact you and it may impact those around you, your family members, your loved ones, and so on. Now, there's a 2019 study published in the Association of Psychological Science, which examined individuals affected by Great Recession, and he found an increase in depression, anxiety, and problematic drug use among those who underwent even a single hardship, such as job loss or foreclosure, let alone multiple incidents. And research has linked economic recessions, a shrinking economic output that lasts at least several months, with a rise in mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and even suicide. Now, just to be sure, the U.S. economy could avoid a recession altogether, and if a recession does occur, it could prove short and mild. And I think this is also important, Stephen. It's an important part of the conversation because I think we often, again, when we think about the gap and the gain, we often hear the news and we go immediately into the gap. We go immediately into the, oh my God, how things are going to be really difficult. What if this doesn't work out? When in reality, we have nothing has happened. When in reality, we're just looking at the possibility of something. And it's good to know, it's good to look at the possibility of something so that you can prepare. But what's not good is to jump into some narrative, into that oh my God narrative. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I'll give an example. I was recently talking to a family member who got a job recently, and it's a different kind of job, so it's something that she's not necessarily used to, and she went into the oh my God, what if this doesn't work out? And you and I were listening to the conversation, like, wait a minute, did something happen? Like, did something happen? And it was like, no, nothing's happened. But immediately, she went into that oh my God, what if something happens? And the oh my gods can definitely lead to that recession anxiety, if you will. So you gotta really pay attention to those oh my God moments, and really on collapse, whether the oh my gods are factual or the oh my gods are made of some narrative, because you're living in the gap, and I'm referring to The Gap and the Gain, that book by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Stephen, what are you hearing here?
Well, I think what you're saying about the news, like listening to the news and just hearing the bad stuff, I think you also, and I'm not really sure why the good stuff doesn't sometimes get as heavily weighted as the not good stuff of just like every day hearing there's a recession or this, inflation, and where it's going to go and whatnot. And this morning I heard the senator from Arizona, Sinema, I think her name is on board with getting this whole climate and tax deal done. That's a beautiful thing and a great thing and a helpful thing. And even if you don't understand it, and I'm sure a lot of people don't understand it because you're not going to read it, it's just knowing that it's a positive step. It's a possibility that it's going to shrink this inflation and get us back to where we don't have this recession anxiety. That's the times you got to hold on to.
I agree, and what that leads to is we have to learn to create those positive
Right.
moments, the positive circumstances. You're likely not necessarily going to hear them from the news, but you got to learn to create that. And you and I experienced that together because let's talk about COVID, right? COVID-19 took the economy into a 2-month recession, and it really pulled the U.S. into record high unemployment rates. So often we ask ourselves, are we ready for a COVID return? Are there any is there a potential for any other pandemic or hardships that could ruin the economy? And I remember, Stephen, at the very beginning of COVID, that's what everyone talked about. How terrible it was going to be, how bad it was going to be, how everyone was going to lose, their jobs, and how we were going to suffer significantly from what was going on, this pandemic that we knew nothing about and nobody knew how to deal with it. But I remember you and I created a different narrative. We were not given the narrative by the news. We just created a different narrative, a narrative that was more empowering to the two of us, a narrative that really helped us sort of like look for almost again, I go back to that gain to sort of measure, you know, ourselves and the circumstances against what we have, against all the beautiful blessings that we have, not the things that are necessarily gone bad. And guess what? For me personally, I can tell you, I was scared about COVID, but I think my business grew stronger because of COVID. I mean, when you think about virtual meetings before COVID, virtual meetings were almost unknown and not necessarily favored by executives or anyone for that matter. And today, you talk about having a virtual meeting, and it's almost like a common thing. And you've done the same thing, Stephen. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I up until March of 2020 when I closed my office, I had never done Zoom readings, and it opened up. I mean, as you said, Elix, as scary as it was, and believe me, it was scary. It just opened this whole like opportunity of being able to now do things from home. And would I ever have thought I would be doing court hearings, after the months went through and went by and we started slowly opening up court, would I ever think I'd be doing a juvenile court hearing over the phone? Absolutely never. I would have thought that. But it just, I mean, and of course now, thank God, we're back into court and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there was so many positives, and I think people are still, if you think about it, you're still finding positives from this pandemic.
Yeah, and positives from what started as, oh my God, this could be really, really bad.
Right.
And I think that is part of what we have to do. So that leads me, Stephen. So with all this uncertainty, right? How do we maintain a positive outlook? Because you are absolutely right. We are bombarded by a whole lot of negativity, and if you turn on the TV, about 90% of what you watch is probably negative, unless you are like Stephen and I, who watch Golden Girls and Seinfeld and other funny shows to keep us motivated. But would you agree?
Listen to Christmas music.
And we listen to Christmas music because, again, that was one of our coping mechanisms to sort of avoid the negativity. But the first thing that I would say is you got to narrow your focus. So you got to pay less attention to the microeconomic news and focus more on your particular situation. This one act can save you 75% of the stress, Stephen. So in other words, really just, focus. This is an opportunity to really practice gratitude. Focus on what it is that you have. Focus on all the things that have gone really well for you versus the few things that may not have gone as well. Anything else, Stephen? Anything else that you would add as it relates to narrowing your focus?
No, I think it's good.
And when you're taking in the news surrounding recession odds or any other economic reports that may lead to some negative narrative, I would say observe them, but don't absorb them, because the human brain was designed to not only have the capacity to care about the things closest to us. So you gotta, So you gotta really make sure you can observe, you can pay attention, but I would not absorb them, and get at, and take them in and own them.
Well,
Anything.
oh, I'm
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
Lex.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that that's like what we did when with COVID and hearing all this negative news is that we would listen to the news in the morning and then that was it for the day.
That's
And
it.
it was a great coping mechanism.
Yeah. And I tell you, I am forever grateful. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, because, of course, we also deal with that recession anxiety. We dealt with the pandemic anxiety. Of course, we're human beings. That's part of human nature. But you got to pay attention to what it is that you're feeding your brain, because if you're feeding more of what's going to keep adding more fuel to that anxiety, you're going to get more anxiety. So you got to find ways to diffuse feeding your brain, or feeding some story or some narrative that's going to lead you to more anxiety, more bad, more discomfort, more insecurity, if you will. So I think we got to take a break, Stephen. So when we come back, we'll review a few more things that we can do that will keep us from avoiding that negative down spiral, the rabbit hole of that recession anxiety. And so let's take a break. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex. With me, my amazing co host,
Stephen Fredericks here.
Stephen Frederick, who happens to be an attorney, a medium, my husband, and he happens to be also very handsome. And
Thank
together
you.
we are Steelex.
Steelex.
So, Stephen, we are talking, today's conversation is about how to maintain positivity, balance, mental health coping with what we are calling recession anxiety. And, and we're talking about what are some of the things that we can do specifically that can help us maintain a positive outlook in the face of the current circumstances. So the other thing that I would, first and foremost, we just talked about, you know, uh, just really paying attention, but not really focusing, absorbing the bad news. It's okay to listen, it's okay to observe, but do not absorb the bad news, specifically when you're watching TV news. The other one is meet with a professional. So, for example, if you have a worried about your financial status and your financial future, it would be a good idea to meet with a financial advisor. If you have a different kind of worry, maybe perhaps you're dealing with a significant anxiety because of the unknown, then perhaps it may be a good idea to meet with a therapist, somebody that can help you, that can guide you deal with some of that uncertainty. Now, remember, anxiety is really about uncertainty about the future events. So, talking to somebody, talking to an expert, could actually ease your mind, and that's the idea here. One other thing that you could do is do or review a worst case scenario. Now, ordinarily, when you're talking to me, I never talk. I'm not somebody who advocates for looking at worst case scenarios. But in this case, it's important because looking or doing the exercise of looking at a worst case scenario sort of helps you on collapse, if you will, some of the stories that we make up about what it's really going to happen versus the reality of what it's really going to happen. And often the fear and the anxiety comes from some made up thing that it's likely has nothing to do with reality. So talk about your fears, talk about what it is that you're worried, and ask yourself, if that happened, then what? And then whatever the answer is, then ask again. So if that happened, then what? And keep going down until you get to, oh, wait a minute. At the end of the day, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna survive. Yes, there's ups and downs. Yes, there's discomfort. Yes, there are circumstances that often not ideal, not comfortable, and we're gonna be okay. Sometimes we just have to really let go of the fear itself of, oh my God, what if I lose my job and then I end up homeless? The truth is, for me, and I'm not discounting that as a reality for some. Please don't hear it that way. But the truth is, for many of us, that is not, that's not a reality. We're gonna do whatever we need to do to overcome whatever it is that's getting in our way. Stephen, what would you add, if anything, to that?
Well, I think all of these that you're giving are terrific things, and most of them are things that people can do very quickly and by themselves. And I think it's just changing the mind, perspective. The last thing you just talked about, worst case scenario, I 100% agree with the former, not the latter. I get the reasoning behind that, but coming from where I am as a medium and teaching classes, that worst case scenario is gone for good for me. For me, anyway, my perspective is that it does nothing. It doesn't help. So it's just one of those things that, out of everything you've said, I think are all great. And I get the worst case scenario, I do. But just for me and my perspective, I just, there's too much energy here in this world right now. And there's that energy, even if you're trying to get an understanding of not making up stories, I still don't think that's the way to go. Just me.
Yeah, and by the way, that is what this conversation is about. Some things you'll connect with, some others you won't.
Right.
So
right.
you take what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You can just discounted. There's no absolutes in this conversation, and I don't claim to be an expert in any of it. I am simply offering you some new ideas, some new ways of looking at something that perhaps may empower you. If you feel that they don't, that's okay. Look for something else that may empower you. Now, this next one, though, I know is something that you know a little bit about, and I know you practice a whole lot of it. So, this is taking time for yourself and breathe, Stephen. Taking a moment to pause, take a few deep breaths can really help you get center. What would you recommend people do when they find themselves really emotionally overwhelmed or emotionally hijacked by their own anxiety?
Well, I love that. And what you just said, Elix, of just taking some time for yourself and breathing, that is called meditating. And a lot of people don't think that. A lot of people get very overwhelmed when they hear that word meditating. Oh, I've got to sit for 20 minutes or 30 minutes with my legs crossed and, like levitating off the ground and like humming stuff. No, seriously. So even taking 1 minute to do what you just said, Elix, is perfect, because that 1 minute just will change to just the makeup and the dynamics of your energy around you, and that one hopefully positive thought that you're applying in your intention is gonna change exactly your perspective and your feeling, and it's going to change I was going to say that the next couple of hours, and if you keep doing it, it's going to be even more hours and more hours, and it's going to change the next day and 2 days, and so it's a great tool.
Yeah, and one practice that I do, and I would say that it's in the realm of meditating, because I do close my eyes, and I often do it at the end of the night, just before bedtime. Is I just simply close my eyes when I'm in bed, and then I just really say thank you for anything. I think about my day, and I focus on being grateful for all the good things that happen, and not the so good things, and I just say thank you, and that helps me reframe my day, and it always, actually, not almost, it always leaves me with this experience of peace and fulfillment, if you will. So that's yet another practice, and then the last one I would say is expand your frame of reference. Do not look at your current situation and say, "Oh my God, this is this is it. There's nothing else. This is what I'm left with." I think you need to really expand your frame of reference. Invent something. Look at your next. How do you see yourself in the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years, and be willing to create something, even if you have no idea how. You don't need to know the how. The first step is just be curious. Imagine what life could be like, and just speak it, because words create our reality, and what we speak, actually, it starts with our mind. What we think, our thoughts become words, our words become actions, and our actions becomes our reality. How about that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that goes hand in hand with staying in the present when you're trying to also deal with any kind of anxiety. And I always use the example that, if someone's 50 years old and they think, oh my God, in 20 years I'm going to be 70, and like in 30 years I'm going to be 80. That right there, that thought process, because that's clearly not in the present, right? That's in the future.
Yep.
That anxiety just will, it will boil up faster than anything you've ever felt, versus that's why I said it's so wonderful that we've got these tools that we can do ourselves, versus switching that to be in the present, saying, but wait a minute, I'm 50 right now, I am healthy, I've got a wonderful life, and if you focus on that present time, that anxiety just dissipates immediately. It's like it melts away. So it's that perspective. I think that plus, always remembering, which I love, you're not alone. that every other person that's around you, or there's people that have similar situations, or the world itself does not want to be dealing with this inflation or recession. Everybody wants out. So we're all together in this. We're not alone. And I think that also helps anxiety.
That is wonderful. And, what you said is so important, Stephen, because remember, all we have is now. Yesterday is done, over. Tomorrow is not. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. It doesn't exist. All we got is right now, and all you got to do is focus on your now and create something spectacular now. So I think this has been an awesome show. I hope you guys got value from listening to our show today. And Stephen, if people want to connect with you, if they want a reading, if they want to know what you are up to, how can they do that?
They can just type in stephenthemedium.com. That's my website. Or Stephen the Medium on any social media. And I think there is a potential or a possibility that Lady of the Dunes may still be in another theater, yet a different one, sort of near Labor Day. But everything is moving forward. I know we talked about it at the beginning. Everything's moving forward to get people access to see this documentary.
Fabulous. And I was going to say something and I forgot, and we're running out of time. So you can reach me at Coach Helix. Oh, I was going to say, if you haven't seen the Steelix series, you got to go into Stephen the Medium YouTube, subscribe, and watch our 3 episodes. We are going to have a 4th one very soon, and they're funny, they're hilarious, they're going to make you laugh, and they're going to make you feel good. So I highly recommend you take a look at Steelix, the series, on YouTube, Stephen the Medium, at Stephen the Medium. That said, you can find me at Coach Helix. And once again, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. And I think we have a guest next week. I don't quite remember who, but we'll be back next week. So see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Ma Clock.
Thank you, Mom.